My wedding was September 21st, 2019. We had a fairly decent-sized wedding. My cousin, on my stepdad's side, we are not close whatsoever. And her boyfriend have only been dating not even 6 months at this point. I've met the guy once before my wedding and he never shows up to any family functions. We're all having a great time at my wedding. My husband and I are mingling with guests while everyone dances. The next thing I know is my cousin's boyfriend asks the DJ for his mic and goes to the center of the dance floor saying he has an announcement to make and calls my cousin over. So, I rush over and say, "Nope, no one is getting engaged during my special day, especially during my reception. You can get engaged later tonight but not right now. It's my day. Thank you for understanding," and I go to walk away. My cousin starts puffing and my aunt, her mom, starts yelling at me and calling me an entitled brat. It causes a huge fight and they all end up leaving. My mom, stepdad, dad, and stepmom all are on my side and were even pissed that they think it's okay to do that during a wedding they all paid for. My nana, stepdad's mom, says I was wrong and told me to apologize and call them over and allow him to propose. Needless to say, it didn't happen. Flash forward to Christmas. It was terrible. My stepdad's entire side were rude and ignoring my husband and I. And of course, guess what happens? My cousin and her now fiancé announced their wedding date, September 21st, 2020. I'm beyond pissed and so not planning to go. It's my damn 1-year wedding anniversary. My family is upset that they would do that to piss me off for not allowing them to get engaged during my reception. My cousin says they chose to get married on their 1-year engagement anniversary. Either way, regardless of the real reason, I'm still upset. Of course, my nana is super excited. I am a 37 years old male. I have a 13Y.0 son. I was a widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16Y.0 daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. My son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot but not to the point of being concerning. My wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. My son complained about having to be forced out of his comfort zone and having his need for space invalidated. I spoke to both my wife and stepdaughter and asked them to give him space and freedom to spend his time however he wanted. They apologized and promised to let him be. As Mother's Day was approaching, I wanted to throw my wife a surprise Mother's Day celebration. It was no longer a surprise because my stepdaughter gave her the heads so she could prepare. Yesterday I got off work earlier than usual to get final arrangements done. We planned to celebrate at the restaurant and invited her family there. I had the key and while I was entering the house through the front door I overheard my wife and stepdaughter talking to my son. My wife was asking my son if he could convince me to let him stay home and not go with them to the restaurant to celebrate. I paused and decided to keep listening. My son said why and she told him that his introverted and socially inept attitude will make her family uncomfortable and will ruin the mood. He promised her that he'd be well behaved and would try to interact and socialize with everyone, but she said that she wasn't buying it. He kept reassuring her, but she snapped and told him that technically she's not his mom, so she didn't get why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her so badly. My stepdaughter threw some, I don't remember, backhanded comment and then both of them were shocked to see me standing there. Both were staring without saying anything. I told my son and his stepsister to go to their rooms, then told my wife that the celebration was off, cancelled. She tried to argue, asking why repeatedly, and I told her why. She tried to explain that she didn't mean it like that and that I only heard part of the conversation but not all of it. I told her I was done arguing and the decision was already made. She yelled, asking what she was going to tell her family, and said that I was making tremendous mistake towards her. I ignored her while she kept throwing tantrum after a tantrum. Early this morning she took my stepdaughter and went to stay with her folks. Not a single call or text from her so far. Situation is full of tension. I'm upset still, but more hurt to be honest. I mean, yes, I did say I was going to have this celebration, but I thought that what she said to my son was too harsh to ignore. I am a 16 years old female. I used to have a good relationship with my mother. That has since crashed and burned since she dated and married my stepdad, Gary, 6 years ago. Gary treats his son Ian, 19 male, like he's the center of the universe and expects my mother to as well, so she does. Anything Ian wants, Ian gets, and that usually comes at the expense of me. Ian wanted my room when they moved it. I was forced to go to another room to make the transition easier for everyone. Ian wanted a car for his 16th birthday. I didn't get braces for another year. Ian wanted to go on an expensive trip for spring break. I had to give up volleyball to make it happen. Ian wanted to have his side of the family over. I was expected to find somewhere else to be, since I wasn't family. My mother just went along with all of this and acted like it shouldn't affect me at all. My dad was overseas for a long time, and we used to FaceTime, and he was so upset by what he was hearing. He's home now and he's offering to have me come live with him. I'm not seeing a reason not to go, and so I told my mom I wanted to go live with my dad. She predictably freaked out and asked why I'd want to do that and said that we had such a good relationship. She didn't understand how this came so out of the blue. I told her that we haven't had a good relationship since she blindly decided to follow Gary's lead and give Ian anything he wanted, and it always came at my expense. My mom tried to argue, so I said I also wanted to leave because she let them kick me out of my own house because I wasn't family. So I was going to go live with someone who was. My mom started crying and said she wouldn't let me go. So I told her that my dad was willing to go to court over it and I was old enough to be able to say where I wanted to be. She's been a crying mess since I told her, and Gary is being a jackass about how awful I'm being. He was. ING at me about how terribly I'm treating them and how I'm not thinking about them at all. I asked why should I. He never thought of me when he was taking things from me to give to his kid. I said let's face facts here, you don't care about me, what you care about is losing the child support you spend on your son. He sort of went slack-jawed and I walked off. My dad said my mom called and threatened to take him to court, so he said he'd see her there. Now she's panicking because she realized he is planning on taking her to court over this. Mom and Gary of course think I'm the asshole for making things hard for everyone. But my dad and grandparents say to leave and never look back. I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment, that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all, that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did. me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me.